everyone, and welcome to the RMTV Women's Podcast. This is episode 81, and due to coronavirus and us practicing our social distancing, we are going to be Skyping this week. No, the Redmen office was closed, so we had no choice but to Skype. But as you can see, Amy's here, and we are joined by Emma for this week's pod.
Hey guys.
Hi.
Hey guys.
Hey guys, Nicole.
This feels really weird.
It is weird.
It feels really odd. I don't know how I feel about it.
I've never done a group Skype call before.
Oh, I have. This is going to be the future. If coronavirus never goes away, this is how we're going to have to interact on a daily basis.
God, well, don't say that.
I had to FaceTime my grandma the other night, and she's 80. She's like 88, I think.
That's cute.
89, something like that. And all I could see was just one eye. So
I
was like, I can't see you. Yeah, but I can see you, so it's okay. I was like, all right.
We FaceTime my grandma and granddad because I don't want to go round because just in case I give it to them. I don't have it just in case. I haven't gone round since I've come home. And we FaceTime them. And all we can see was my granddad's ear. And I was like, he thought it was a phone call. And he was inside of his ear. And we were like, oh, it's Video. And he goes,
move back a bit.
Well, I FaceTimed my sister's dog yesterday, so
yeah.
There wasn't much speech, but it was good.
No.
Yeah.
The only good thing about this social distancing is that I can actually pee with the dog.
Oh, that is
forced
cute.
To be here.
Yeah, that is cute.
I can't fully social distance though, because I've still got to go to work. So I'm like.
So do I.
Yeah.
Although I'm glad about that because I will literally lose my mind. I had one day in the house on Monday. Don't know what day it is.
Wednesday.
Still jet lagged. Yeah, on Monday, and I was like, I think I went for about 3 runs. I was bored.
Was that the night I was texting you and it was like half, it was like quarter to 11 and you were like, oh sorry, I've just been out for a run, and I was like, what?
Yeah, I'm losing my mind. Yeah, losing my mind. Anyway.
Well, we'll crack on with, I think the biggest, apart from coronavirus, the biggest talking point in women's football at the minute is obviously the whole Euros saga that's happening at the minute. Obviously the men's Euro has been pushed back till next year now. Pretty much the same time as the women's, give or take a few days. What do you think is going to happen with it, or do you think it's going to be a case of the first couple of games of the women's Euros is like back to back with the men's, or the dates will change, or do you reckon our competition will be pushed back? What do you think is going to be going on with it?
So what I think is going to happen is the Euros is going to be delayed by a year, the women's Euros. That seems the most likely solution at the moment, and that's what everyone seems to be talking about as the way forward. Me personally, I don't think I'd mind that too much because obviously the Men's World Cup is going to be in the winter, so there is a summer slot there.
Yeah.
And I just think it would be nice for the women's games to be kind of played back to back with the men's, but from a personal point of view, that's going to be a hell summer at work.
Yeah.
But also, I just think give the women that kind of their own limelight, and with it being a home Euros, and obviously the men's ones is kind of it's split across was it 12 cities in Europe, so it's just going to be a nightmare to sort out. So I just think for the sake of everyone, it's easier to postpone the women's one for a year, give it the limelight, give it the entire summer. And I think that's what's going to happen. And I think it was Rob Harris from the AP, he did an interview with the UEFA president yesterday, and I think that's, judging by his response to his question, I'm pretty sure that's what's going to happen. It's going to be delayed by a year.
Is there any chance to actually do it in the same year, but like after, or is that not?
I mean,
possible?
There's definitely a chance because at the moment I think the men's final is 4 days after the start of the women's, I think. So I think the men's is due to finish on the 11th of July. The women's kick starts on the 7th of July at Old Trafford. So there's only a 4-day window where there's a crossover. So you could potentially move it back a week, I guess. I say that like it's so easy to do. It's not. There's like serious financial implications and all kinds to sort out with that. But in theory, you could potentially move it back a week and then do the 2 tournaments back to back. But if you're going to move it back a week, I just think, why not move it back an entire year? And then, like you say, you give it that summer limelight, and it's a tournament in its own right. It's not in the shadow of the men's tournament.
Yeah. Cause I've seen a lot of shouts of like people saying, "Oh, we'll just do it back to back," and then it's, it might bring more attention to the women's and more crowds or whatever. But I was thinking it probably won't, though, because in one hand, the people love the fact that there's loads of football, loads of sport on TV and summers and stuff like that. But then if it's just constant game after game after game after game, you do get sick of it. You do. Yeah. You think, and like, you don't want, say for example, England men to be playing and then literally straight after England women play, because then people will be like, well, I'm not really interested, so I'm not going to watch it. Sort of type thing. Whereas if it's given its own summer, its own build up, then people probably are more inclined to pay more attention, because, like you said, there's no World Cup because it's in the winter. So then you are giving it its own like platform sort of type thing.
Yeah, like I completely agree, because I just think the men's games, with it being split across so many cities as well in Europe, it's not like it's a home Euros. I think people, obviously the England men's team are playing at Wembley for a lot of the tournament, and that's just a case of, a luck of the draw, and obviously if they reach semi-finals and the finals, the men's that's at Wembley as well. So it is kind of like a home Euros, but it's not really in the grand scheme of things. So I think, like, I heard a couple of shouts yesterday from people saying, oh, why don't you just play like a women's game in the morning in the same stadium before a men's game? And I was like, well, no, because it's not a home Euros. Like, there's 12 cities involved.
Our kick-off be like 11:30 in the morning or something.
Yeah. So kind of like what they did at the SheBelieves, where you have like one stadium and then you have, an early game and a late game. But that's just not, in my opinion, that's just never, ever going to work. So,
Amy's just like, no.
The thing is, though, the only thing that I think about, there was that massive schedule that came out with all the stadiums are going to play and when they're going to play, when each group's going to play. Is it as simple as literally just like picking it up and moving that to the next year? Because what happens if there's already events that are planned to go ahead in certain stadiums, or there's like, I don't know, concerts and things, they get put in stadiums sometimes as well, don't they? But so is it really as simple as literally just going, okay, it's not going to happen in 2021, let's just put it all in the same place in 2020? No, is that going to be an issue?
That's exactly it. Like, it's going to be a massive issue. And that's the problem with, and this is the problem with what's happened with the men's Euros, like there's sponsors involved. So, sponsors are paid for this, obviously TV rights, broadcasters, like you say, the venues, even things like security, all of that is going to be affected. So it is like there's no simple solution to it, and that's kind of what I was meaning earlier when I said, like, you can't just move it back a week, because it's the same if you're going to move it back a week or you're going to move it back a year. It's the same implications, whether that be the financial or just the general organization of it. It's basically a nightmare, the whole thing. So
what kind of happens in terms of like preparation as well? Because obviously like we're already talking about it now, and there's already questions as to whether it'll be Phil Neville. We don't know at this point. You would assume yes. Whether what his team's going to be like, he's obviously had meetings with his players and goes, look, we're all now working towards that 2020 benchmark. Obviously the Olympics was involved as well, but I don't really know what's happening with the Olympics at the moment either. It's looking more likely that it's going to get postponed or pushed back or whatever. But in terms of like preparation, how does that change things? Because that's another whole year. Maybe in England's case, it's probably a good thing because of the situation they're in at the moment. But maybe for other teams that have had that benchmark, maybe the ones that aren't going to the Olympics, who have already started preparing for 2021, what does that sort of mean to them, and how do they sort of like get around that? Because obviously it's a massive disruption to the football calendar, and over not just 1 year but a few years now.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I think so. Just on the Olympics, so the IOC have their meeting this week, so they started their meetings yesterday, and we should hopefully find out by the end of the week whether the Olympics is going to be postponed. So they're in talk. So after yesterday's meeting, they said that they were still, I think it was fully committed to going, full ahead with the Olympics, which to me just sounds mad.
Especially the situation we're in at the moment, it's just a bit like...
Yeah, well, obviously that was before the news broke last night that the Japanese FA president has come down with coronavirus. So I think they might... I think he's also the vice chairman of the Olympic Committee. I might be wrong there.
That's fabulous.
But, yeah,
he's not going to be in them meetings then, is he?
Things.
He's going to be doing what we're doing.
Yeah, he'll be on a laptop now, him.
He will. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But I think the Phil Neville thing's really interesting because the FA have publicly backed him. They've said they want him in for the Olympics and the Euros. It's all part of a 2-year plan. Even at the start of the SheBelieves, he told us that he'd worked really closely with Sue Campbell. Phil has a really good relationship with Sue Campbell, and she was like massively on board with him bringing in the young players as part of this 2-year plan, working towards the Euros. So if they were to delay that by a year, then it does give the FA an opportunity to rethink their plan, whether or not they still think Phil is the man for the job, whether or not Phil still thinks that he can motivate these players for another 2 years rather than just that 1 year building up to it. Because at the moment, the England camp, they have a training camp in April, and then they don't meet up again for an actual international until September. So really, he's got the Olympics, and then he's got, 9 months or something to prepare for what would be a Euros in the summer. So if that was to then be put back a year, that's like he's literally got another year and 9 months to prepare. And that's, for a new manager coming in, that is long enough, in my opinion, to build something. So the FA, I think they'd have to have a think about whether or not, there's somebody else who could come in and do that job. So it would raise a lot of interesting questions if it was put back a year.
Do you think that camp in April will still go ahead?
At the moment, no. I think
that's what I mean. So then, if that camp in April doesn't go ahead, and then say for some unknown reason that the Olympics does go ahead, that's obviously he hasn't got a full lineup of squad there. So then, like you're saying, it's September before he sees them all again. That's like a really big gap.
I would imagine if they were to cancel the Olympics and the coronavirus had kind of passed by,
there'd be something.
They would try and organise some kind of international fixture.
Yeah,
but you don't know. I think he was quite keen to, and again, this is nothing confirmed, but I think they would probably be quite keen to try and organise some kind of, whether or not it's just a training camp or something before the Olympics anyway.
Yeah.
Just to get, the GB squad together, let alone the England squad. So I'd imagine there would be something.
He's got no time.
No.
Because before going into the Olympics, I don't really know if this happens, but do you usually, because obviously it's not just England players and he won't be as familiar with some of the players that will be in the squad as he is with the likes of Steph Horton, for example. He's not going to be as 100% in with them. Do they usually have a camp before the Olympics where they get together, or do they literally just fly into it? Because as you said, if the Olympics still goes ahead, it doesn't really seem like there's going to be any point in time where he can have that time with the whole of the GB squad. Obviously, he knows what they're capable of, he knows where they play and stuff, but when it comes to it, you can't just throw a team out that haven't really played with each other, because how are they meant to be successful when they don't really know how each other plays? Is there a specific camp before the Olympics that they would have gone to? There might not be, but if there is, that's probably not going to go ahead either. So it just seems like everyone's preparation for the Olympics is going to be completely ruined. Even athletes that compete in singular sports that are not team sports, that's even going to be affected by it.
Yeah, well, obviously they've banned in terms of just the athletes, they've banned training, and there's no gyms and stuff available. So I know Katarina Johnson-Thompson tweeted yesterday, and she was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. So yeah, everyone's massively affected. It's a good question about the camps, because they've only competed in the Olympics once before, and that was in 2012. Yeah. So and I think I'm trying, I was a lot younger then, so I'm trying to think back. I think they had a camp before, but I'm not entirely sure. But you would imagine that they would at least,
haven't you? You've got
you'd imagine you'd at least, well, even if it's part of the same camp, as in you just meet a week earlier and you train and stuff. But I know Phil and Bev Priestman, they've been going to WSL games probably about the last year, trying to sort of have a look at everyone. I know he's spoken to like players from Wales, Scotland, and I'm not sure about Northern Ireland, although he has come out publicly and said he's spoken to players of every nation. But I know he's definitely spoken to players from Wales and Scotland, and he's obviously told them a long list of players that he's been looking at. So the players who are on his radar know that already. They've known that for months. So he has an idea of the squad. But obviously the fact that there's hardly been any WSL games like the last 2 months as well hasn't exactly helped. So I just think the whole thing is just a bit of a shambles, really, isn't it?
It really is.
But
it's probably for the best if the Olympics gets postponed, because just nobody's prepared.
Yeah,
and I don't think Japan would mind, because judging by their performances at the SheBelieves Cup, which was really disappointing from their point of view, if you look at them as a nation, that they were going through a transition at the World Cup. They brought through a lot of younger players. This SheBelieves Cup was essentially, a big warm-up tournament for them for their host games, Olympic Games, and they were poor. So I think they might quite like the idea of another year, maybe.
I think a lot of teams would.
Yeah. Apart from Spain, I think Spain are pretty happy with where they're at.
Spain actually did really well, didn't they? Like,
very well, yeah.
I don't think a lot of people were expecting Spain to play the way they did.
Yeah, they've come on a lot in the last year, so I think I wouldn't say I was surprised by how good they were, but they were definitely sort of a breath of fresh air. They were really good, and actually, the game against USA was like phenomenal. That was such a good game, and big up Julie Ertz coming up with the header. Was it 85th minute, 86th minute?
Late on, wasn't it?
I can't cope with her. I can't cope.
She's amazing. So but Spain were brilliant. Like they've got some really good midfielders. Everyone knows that they play like possession football and they keep the ball really well. But they've got some good players. So they're definitely one to watch.
It probably helps that like the likes of Barcelona and Atletico are doing well and they're sort of rising as well. So if you've got that talent in the Spanish teams to begin with, and you sort of like breeding them into the international team as well, it only means for success, really, doesn't it? If the team in the country is doing well, the players are going to be more confident going into national games and things like that.
Well, that's it. The Spanish domestic league is just grown so much in the last 12 months, and that they're starting to pump money into it. I remember when I spoke to Tony Duggan, I think it was back in November time, and she was talking about how TV and like sponsors and stuff in Spain were starting to get on board with the teams, and obviously she's at Atletico Madrid now, so she was at Barcelona the season before, so she's kind of seen that progression over the last 2 years of kind of how the domestic game's grown in Spain, and it was really interesting to hear sort of her take on how much it had grown just in the last 12 months, and you could see that out in America.
Yeah.
In terms of like SheBelieves, then, so she went over, what was it like media wise?
Mental. No, it was I'm so tired. I'm so tired. No, it was really good. The US media access is just like incredible. So
really,
it's
different to ours.
Yeah, so we were the FA are really good with like the women's football side of stuff, and love you, David and Wendy. But it was just another level. Like, obviously, you look at the likes of Megan Rapinoe and Rose Lavelle, Julie Ertz, and Carly Lloyd as well, the players that are in such demand. And the way they speak, it's that you can tell they're passionate about growing the game. So they don't see media as a chore. They see it as part and parcel of the game, that it's something they want to be involved in because they have things that they want to talk about and they have opinions that they want to say. So it wasn't a case of us kind of being like, can we get this? Can we get this? It was just, who do you want? We'd like to speak to Megan Rapinoe, and she would happily come out. She'd give us her time. She was honest. She was brilliant as usual. It was just really incredible to see these phenomenal footballers that are the best in the world at what they do talk about, obviously, the things about equal pay. So when we were in Dallas, so basically after the game we had to run, and when I say run I mean literally run through the stadium to get to the mix zone, but we have to be in the mix zone basically at 90 plus 1 minutes. So you have to file your match report pretty much on like the 86th, 87th minute. So when England let in an 84th minute goal against Spain in Dallas, I was cursing quite heavily. This was also the night that Liverpool got knocked out of the Champions League, so I wasn't in the best of moods. So I had to like basically rewrite my entire 800-word report, run down through the crowd. So we were literally there. So there was Susie Rapp from The Guardian. I think it was Claire Bloomfield from Daily Mail that was running with us as well. Molly Hudson might have been with us sometimes. And we literally had like laptop in hand, like phone in another, headphones, bottle of water because it was like boiling hot. We're sweating like no end, running through this crowd to get to the mix zone. And then I finished off, I think, like the last couple of paragraphs of my match report on my phone in the mix zone. And then they just kind of whizzed, like they just whipped the players through. So obviously what we were going to ask the players on like the 80th minute would have been slightly different to what we asked them 10 minutes later, because they then conceded a goal, finished the tournament with three points out of a possible 9, 1 win out of 3. It changes the whole dynamic. So you've then got to kind of think on your toes, right? What questions are we going to ask now? You don't know what mood they're going to be in. So it was all a bit mental. But yeah, Nikita Paris came out, I think, first to us anyway. I think Leah Williamson and Beth Ingham was doing some stuff with TV down at the other end. And Nikita came out and she was devastated. You could see on her face. I thought she was going to cry, actually. It was really hard to see how disappointed she was on behalf of the England team, because that late goal it was against Japan, not Spain. It was Spain.
It was Spain, yeah.
Spain. That late goal against Spain just just killed it, really. I think that was the moment when they all sort of looked at themselves and said, yeah, we need to take responsibility for the fact that we've not been playing it the way that we can. And she came out and she was honest in her interview and said, she actually directed one of her answers at us and said, look, you're right to kind of question us and you're right to question Phil, but don't hammer him, hammer us, which was quite, and she was really like, yeah, she was getting quite emotional about it and she was very strong on it. So that was hard to see, but good to see at the same time, because it showed how much she cared about the defeat and about, you know, the way this England team was going. So Phil came out, he was really honest. Obviously said that people needed to ask questions about his job. So that was a busy mix zone. And then we went back to obviously transcribe all that, write it all up while the USA were playing their final match against Japan. And then I had to do the whole thing all over again, run back to the mix zone. And as I was running back, we stopped because USA were on the attack and they scored a goal. I can't remember who got the last one. Was it Carly Lloyd maybe? But anyway, so we watched that goal, got back in the mix zone, and then the US president, US Soccer Federation released a statement on equal pay. So again, we had to read the statement really, really quickly, and then basically kind of grab the US media officer and say, "Have you seen this?"
Colin was like,
"Yeah." No. We were like, "Read it." So we were like, "Make sure Megan Rapinoe and Carly Lloyd and everyone reads this." So he was like, "Oh boy." So so then we got them, and I think I left the stadium at about 11:30 at night. I'd been there since maybe, I don't know, 10:30 in the morning, 11 a.m. And we'd spoken to Carly Lloyd, Megan Rapinoe, and we'd done a press conference with Vlatko from the US team, and then obviously went home and then had to type all that up. So that was a long day. It was good.
Who was the best person that you spoke to in the whole trip? Who did you enjoy speaking to?
I know it's obvious and everyone says, oh, the media are obsessed with Megan Rapinoe, but it's because when you actually speak to her and you hear how intelligent and passionate she is, it's mind-blowing. So I thought, going there, oh, I can't wait to speak to Rose Lavelle. She was really cool, and I was just interested to see like what her character was like, because I hadn't really kind of seen her come across as I hadn't really seen her personality as much as I had seen the other players, so I was quite intrigued to see what she was like. But I was just blown away by Rapinoe. Just like, even in the aftermath of that new statement coming out, they just won the SheBelieves Cup. She scored that incredible goal as well from the free kick in the last game, and she just came out to the mix zone. Obviously there was cameras everywhere, all the Japanese press were there as well, and her team, what was most telling was that her teammates came out to watch her speak to the press.
Really?
Wow.
So Lindsay Horan was in the corner. Carly Lloyd, who we'd just spoken to, stayed there. I think there was someone else as well. Maybe Crystal Dunn might have been there. And they were stood in the corner watching her speak to us, because what she was saying was just so inspirational, and it was just absolutely spot on. She was talking about the team and how everyone was together, and she did, like, it was completely unacceptable, the statement, and a time. So even after they'd just won a tournament where they'd beaten England, they'd confirmed themselves as definitely the world's best team.
Yeah.
There was no question about it. They were heads and shoulders over everyone. They'd had their celebrations on the pitch, and she had come back in and read the statement. And, Carly Lloyd, when we spoke to her, admitted, she said, look, I've not read the entire statement. I've read bits of it, and I've been told, I've been filled in. But you could tell that Megan had read the entire thing. So it was just she just blew me away, because she clearly cared so much about it, and her teammates cared so much about what she said. And that was pretty cool.
Wow.
They did that thing, didn't they, as well, before the match, with like where they did
Yeah.
the t-shirts inside out and all stuff like that.
Yeah, so that was quite funny, because we asked her about that. Obviously, we said, was that pre-planned? And they said no. We literally decided on the day that was what we were going to do. But Megan, she did laugh, because they didn't realise that when they turned it inside out. They didn't realise that their 4 stars were the only things that were showing.
Yeah.
So that was purely accidental. They didn't even plan that. They just turned the shirts inside out and went, "Oh, look at that!" and then just went with it. So she told us that, and she said, "Oh yeah, it was kind of fitting, really, that the only thing that was on show was our success." So
that's it. Because like that whole statement from like the US soccer was mad. Like, and you're reading it and thinking, is that actually like what someone said? And then for them to do that, and it was just the 4 stars, and like everyone was everyone in like women's football was like, who was like interested in that sort of thing, was like buzzing off it as well, because this is a team that's like won 4 World Cups. Their men's team hasn't even got close to doing that, and their president's coming out and going, "Oh, they're not skilled enough." Well, there's just those 4 stars there just proves they're much more skilled than the men's team in over there. Do you know what I mean? Yeah,
you're right. And I think when people say, every time these amazing women talk about equal pay, people across the globe, so people here will go, "Oh, well, they don't bring in the same amount of money," and it's true, we don't in England. But nobody's calling for it in England. The English, the Lionesses aren't saying we should be getting paid the same as the England men, because they recognise that they don't draw that same kind of marketing value. But over in America, the US women's national team bring in more money than the men. They attract bigger crowds, and like you say, they're far more successful. So it's a completely different argument, and it's a no-brainer, really. But I mean, obviously by the time I flew back we flew back the next day via Orlando, so it took sort of, felt like a week. I think it took about 40 hours before I eventually got home. But by the time I got home, the president had resigned, and obviously they brought someone else in. So it was, what she said had an effect, not just her obviously, but Megan Rapinoe was clearly sort of leading the way. So
I feel like some people, like, especially, I know social media can be like the best but the worst place in the world. Like, especially when it comes to this like equal pay argument, some people don't actually know what the US women have achieved. And then they're so quick to go, "Oh, but they're women, they don't bring in as much as men." But like, they don't for one, they don't take the time to actually look into the situation and be like, well, what are the points for and what are the points against? They just go, oh, because they're women, they don't need to get paid as much. Then, like, the men's team obviously has done more than the women's team. But I think a lot of people, if they just take the time to maybe, before they get behind the keyboard and say, oh no, these women don't deserve to, actually look at the statistics, look at what they've achieved, compare that to the men, and then maybe I think a lot more people would understand. And I think with like what the statement said about being more skilled, it's just so irrelevant. You don't, to be a footballer, you don't have to even be skilled. You can be athletic, you can be dynamic. Fair enough, having skill obviously helps. But to sort of call something, it would have made more sense, not saying they should, to go physically women are less able, because that is genuinely like an anatomical thing. Women are smaller, they have less muscle size. That would be so much more, like, it would prove their point so much better than saying something like skill. Like, it's like, that is a national like federation who have sat down and go, oh, what should we reply to that? Let's talk about the skill level. And it's just like, what?
Interesting.
He had nothing else though.
Yeah, well,
exactly.
on that, we asked Carly Lloyd actually referenced that in her response. So yeah, I asked her whether she'd seen the new statement, and she was responding to that, and then she went back to the old statement, and she talked about how she still trains with, I think it was the boys under 18 team, I think it was, that she said, and she still trains with them now. And she turned around and she said, I am more skillful than every single one of them put together, and I'm 37.
Oh,
yeah, she was like, I'm 37 going on 38 years old, and I'm still better than all of them. And it was interesting, and she was talking about that. She was saying, like, when it comes to skill, like, yeah, there's no comparison. But she did say, she said, if you gave me their strength or their acceleration or their natural advantages that you just mentioned, then she was like, I would definitely be able to compete with all of them. So yeah, that made me laugh, actually. It was quite
so baffling that people are like, it's just so frustrating. That's the thing, because if people were more educated on the picture as a whole, they probably wouldn't be saying half the things that they were. So when it comes to things like that, you just kind of have to go, well, we know the people that matter in women's football, the people that watch it because they love it, know behind it. And if other people choose not to, and they choose to take the mick out of it or whatever, that's up to them. But I just think the people that are involved are the ones that matter the most. So as long
if we get more Julie Ertz in the world, then I'm sure more and more people will watch women's football.
I would actually kill to be Julie Ertz.
She was phenomenal. So, like, I knew she was one of the best players in the world anyway. But then just watching her live, you don't see the things off the ball that you see on the TV. So I just, like, I mean, obviously in the England USA game, she was incredible. Like, Carly Lloyd was the best player on the pitch that day, but Julie just controlled everything, and it was the way she spoke. So even before, I was talking to Claire Bloomfield about this, actually, from the Mail, when we were watching the final game in Dallas, and there was somebody who was making a pass, and she basically was already telling the person who the ball was going to where to play the next ball.
Yeah.
So it hadn't even reached there, and she was already directing there. She was already running in that direction. And then there was another time, I remember in the England game, where she had played the ball and made the run for the return pass, and whoever she had, like, tried to play a 1-2 with just wasn't on the same wavelength, and she was frustrated, like, so frustrated with them. And it was just like, they kept the ball, and it was just in midfield. I think it was, near the sideline. It was like, wasn't in a dangerous area, like, nothing came of it, but she was so frustrated that they just weren't on the same wavelength. And it was that kind of attitude that she just had the entire time. I mean, I think she was probably the best player against Japan in USA's final game. Obviously, she scored the winning goal against Spain. She was, like, instrumental against England. She was just unbelievable. And she blew my mind.
Her knowledge of the game is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible. And, like, even I remember, I think I watched a YouTube video ages ago now, but like the US women put out a lot of YouTube content, and it was like mic'd up with Julie Ertz.
Oh my god, I've seen that.
It's
I need to watch it
because the amount of she literally does not stop. But in that sort of position, you need someone like that because she can see. She's not a centre back, but she can see what goes on in front, and she's obviously got good knowledge of what goes on behind as well. But you need someone to constantly talk all the time, be like, oh, someone's coming onto you, there's space here, there's space there, sort of thing. Yeah. And I think sometimes England miss looking at it from
massively.
England needs someone like that. Well, I know Kira Walsh is obviously still getting there, she's still evolving as a player, but she doesn't talk half as much as Julie Ertz does, and you just need someone with that communication skill to be able to dictate the whole game, which she does.
Yeah, well, interestingly, before that USA game, Kieran Thieben from The Athletic, he asked Phil about Julie Ertz in our sort of sit-down press conference before, and basically referred to the World Cup semi-final and said, basically England couldn't handle Julie Ertz in that World Cup semi-final. How do you handle her this time? And Phil admitted that if there was one player he could take out of that USA team, it would be Julie Ertz, because I don't think, like, Kira Walsh is a brilliant footballer. We know that. She does it week in, week out for Man City, and she, range of passing is brilliant, and she's only 22, so she's going to get better. But I do think she is just she's a different player. I think Kira is more like a ball playing midfielder from space, if that makes sense. So she needs the space to play the balls, play the passes, and whereas Julie kind of is more of a traditional DM. I see, like she's like a Fabinho, so she just sort of sits back, and she like there was one moment sort of going back to that game in Dallas where we were literally stood outside the mix zone waiting for the full-time whistle to go, and Japan had like a rare break of attack. And we were at the other end, so we could just see it from the Japanese point of view. So they were moving forward in numbers, and we were like, oh, like they've actually got numbers in attack here. And Julie Ertz just waited and waited and waited, and then she's like a bulldozer. Then she just literally just came in and just went boom, and like absolutely wiped the player out, got the ball, and then just set up a USA attack. And I think they got a corner from it, and it was just like. She's just insane. Wow. Like, we haven't got anyone who has that kind of strength and athleticism all in one package. Yeah. Who can just break down play and kickstart another attack in the way that she does it so frequently for the USA.
In terms of England, then, was there anyone new or old who stood out for you that tournament? I think I know what you're going to say, but
Hempo.
Yeah.
Lauren Hemp was absolutely phenomenal. Like we knew that we were excited that she was in the squad again, because obviously she went to the World Cup as a training player. Yeah. So she didn't go to the World Cup, but she was in that sort of like training squad before. And then she watched the World Cup from home, and then she has obviously been part. I think she made a debut against Portugal, maybe a Czech Republic. She made a debut. In a friendly recently. It was only a few months ago. So I think it was a third cap, I think it was, against USA. So we were all very excited to see her beforehand. There was obviously all the talk in the camp. Interestingly, the build up to the game, every time we asked the players, so we spoke to Ellen White, Steph Horton, I think we might have spoken to Leah before that game as well. And then a couple of the press had spoken to players at Chelsea after the Conti Cup final, and everyone had mentioned Lauren Hemp without being prompted. Like we'd asked about, how are the young players getting on, and she was the first name that people were talking about. So we could tell that there was excitement in the squad. And then that USA game, she was the best player for me. Like Carly Telford was brilliant in goal, but Lauren was just, she was brilliant. She just drove at defenders. She had strength. She could read the game well. She wasn't overly excited. Like she didn't commit and break the press when when it wasn't necessary. It's like she knew what her position was, and I thought she was brilliant,
because she was up against Kelly O'Hara at the back, wasn't she? Right back, and like she's been around for a while. Like she's
one of the best right backs in the world.
Literally. and she got the better of her like a couple of times as well.
She
and
did.
like there was a couple of times where she went past and she managed to get a cross into the box, and Ellen White was like close to a few of them, but like just couldn't get herself in the end of them, because then you've got to go past like pure Abby Dalkemper and all that. Like it's not gonna happen, is it?
Wall.
Yeah. Literally. But then so there was times where I was sitting there and I was like, oh my god, like she's actually getting the better of like one of the best defenders in the world. And there was one moment where she got past her and Kelly O'Hara's like way back, like she can't sprint back, and Rosabella just has to like pure sprint, like full pelt, and like slide tackle it. And it was like a young player like that, she's playing with no fear. That's what it is. She's got no weight. There's no weight on her shoulders. She hasn't got the whole thing of like her being in the World Cup semi-final. Nothing. She's got none of that thought, because I think for some of our players going into that game, it was a case of we need to win today to get them back for that semi-final. But like they just didn't look like the USA were just miles above us. It just didn't even look like it was going to happen. Because she was the one player where you thought if something is going to happen, it's going to come from her.
Yeah, and you're right. She said before the game, I forgot we actually spoke to her before the game. She said that she wanted to play without any fear, and for the whole time, I remember I said this to her before the game. I remember speaking to her after she won England's Young Player of the Year, I think in maybe 2016, 2015, 2016, like years ago, and she was like a 15-year-old or a 16-year-old, and she was like really shy and really just like humble to play for England. And then she's gone through the youth ages. She did really well at Bristol. Obviously she's gone to Man City, and she's definitely sort of broken into that first team now regularly. And she just seems to just go about her work and doesn't really appreciate how she's still 19 years old. I don't think she appreciates how much she has already achieved in what feels like she's been around for ages, but it's not. It's just, like I say, she's gone through those age groups and she's continued to impress in every single one. So she absolutely, like, there was one moment, I think it was just before that one that you were referring to, where there was like a 50-50 challenge right on the touchline, and it was right in front of Phil Neville, and we were sat sort of only a couple of rows behind, so we could hear everything that Phil was saying in that game in Orlando. And Lauren just came absolutely like bundling through, basically knocked like Kelly O'Hara straight off. She was like basically laid down like that, and we were all looking at each other like, oh. And Lauren she didn't even look down at her and be like, are you okay? She just went like that and walked off. And Phil turned around laughing. He was like, obviously applauded her, and then he turned around and he was smiling and laughing as he like sat down in the dugout. And then he said to us afterwards that he described her as a bull on the pitch, and referred to that moment where she just didn't care how Kelly O'Hara was. She was like, I've won the ball, sit down, and just walked away. It was brilliant. It was such a good moment.
Well, I think we should end it on a nice positive high note there.
Yeah.
Because we have been recording for 46 minutes now, so nice. we don't want to bore people too much. I
don't want to talk about the coronavirus anymore. That's all that everyone speaks about.
No.
But what we're
going to do is coronavirus. What?
So what am I going to do for the rest of the day now? I'm going to miss you. Can we just keep talking all day?
We'll just stay on, but we'll just stop recording.
I'll just keep updating each other.
Yeah.
Just gone for a week.
Yeah, maybe not.
That's a bit far.
Just me then.
You will just keep putting it in, and no one will.
Just eating a sandwich.
Oh god, we'll put it on Twitter.
It's like Emma Sanders has left the chat.
I feel like this is one of them world situations where if you don't laugh, you'll cry.
Yeah.
Let's do something.
Well, on that. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Remember to like the video, comment, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We don't know what will be happening next week. It might be this again. We might be in the office. We have no idea. You just have to wait and see. But yeah, thanks for watching. And we'll see you all soon. Bye.